She'd be like, no, she'd be like a teenager. This would be like a teenager girl. She'd be possessed, and she'd be like 5 feet, and she'd be crawling backwards. She'd be wearing like this dark red, this dark red and black dress, and she wouldn't be wearing socks or anything, and her hair would be probably brown, and I was thinking her jaw, like her mouth would be open really far, she got so possessed that the demon like ripped her jaw open, and it'd be like hanging, and her head's kind of crooked, and her tongue's kind of hanging out, and there's vomit all over her, and you know what I mean? And then her head could spin. But I was thinking, when she's roaming on the floor, not only would her head spin, now her head would have to spin slower than Miss Mercy. Miss Mercy's head was kind of fast. This prop would have to spin slower, the head. A lot slower, just to give it more of a creepy look to it. But she would roam on the floor, and sometimes her head wouldn't spin, but sometimes it would. And she'd be crawling, and her arms would go up and down, and her legs would go up and down to make it look like she's actually crawling on the floor. And her face would be like really pale, and like you could see veins all over her face going down to her neck and all that. And her eyes could be like, I don't know, I was thinking like a really dark bloodshot look to her eyes, like a red, you know how your eyes you get bloodshot sometimes if you don't get a lot of sleep at all? Well, it'd be like that, but she'd be so possessed that she couldn't fall asleep, and her eyes would just be like bloodshot, and you could see the veins. I don't know, maybe her eyes could just be all white and there'd be some red in her eyes and all that. Maybe her eyes could be just black, and there'd be like blood going down her face as well, down her eyes. I was thinking maybe just make her eyes normal and have her eyes kind of aiming way up, so it gives this really creepy look to it. And her face could be like really creepy, like you could do so much and have her jaw like over here, and it's like stretched way down, and it's like her tongue's hanging out, and there's puke all over her dress. Like before she got bent backwards, she'd have puke all over her, dress, and blood and all that. But her teeth wouldn't be sharp, it'd just be normal teeth. And she would have kind of a long tongue, but not super long, not like a venom tongue, but short, a little shorter. And her hands could have this pale look, and you could see the veins popping out of her hands. You know what I mean? And you could see her bones, and like she got very possessed. Like she'd be so entirely possessed, like impossible to get unpossessed. She would stay possessed. So, and her feet would have that pale look as well, and you can see the veins popping out. And you could even make it where she got so possessed that the demon like abused her, and she'd have like cracked fingernails and toenails, and her nails would be bleeding, and there'd be cracks in her toenails, and there'd be blood coming out. That would be so creepy. And I don't know what you could name her. Maybe you could name her Possessed, or you could maybe just name her Haunted. I think that would be a good name. Or you could just name her like Possessed Molly or something like that. Molly would be a pretty creepy name. And like, Miss Mercy's audio, how she kind of laughs, but she's like growling. Well, they can make it where it's more of an aggressive, loud growl. Like a really deep growl. I think that would be really creepy. And what they could even do if she roams on the floor, they can make it where her base kind of sticks out, and so when her arms are moving and she runs into the wall, it doesn't put pressure on the motors. But whatever way they can do it is fine. But this prop would be so scary. Like imagine having this in your haunted house. That'd be so scary. Or they could just make it, they can make this sensor thing. Now, a relay switch, they've done this with Jemmy props. Spear Halloween had this really old crawling Jemmy girl, and she kind of moved her arms up and down when she was crawling flat, and her head moved and her arms went up and down. She would go forward and then go back. She'd go so far and then she would go back again, but she was plugged into the wall. And what Spear Halloween could do is make this thing, maybe you attach to her on the floor, and I don't know how you would do it, but they could have like these sensors on the back and the front where if there was no sensor, she would just keep going. But the sensor they could make it where it detects how far she's going, then it would stop. Then she would stop going forward and then go back again. Kind of like the Jemmy possessed crawling girl, but this one would be backwards, right? But that would be so cool. Now, they'd probably make it roam on the floor just because it's just a good idea. Now, you would not be able to have this in a hallway because people would knock it over. Like, you can't have this kind of prop because the base would be really big, right? So what you could do with this prop is you can make a fence, right? A little tiny fence so everyone can see it when it's going, right? But that'd be so freaking creepy. And you could have a room, right, where the bed is and all that, and you could even like make your own bed if you're doing a demon or Satan theme in your haunted house. But anything like anything like this, like, you could save this animatronic fun for the final part in your haunted house. And the final part would be the biggest part of your haunted house. Near the end of the haunted house, you could have her blocked off, but that would be so freaking creepy. And what I would do is I would have a couple red spotlights, not ones that are animated, just a normal red light aiming at her. So when you're going by, you can actually see her. And I would actually make this prop not have light up eyes. Because if it did, I'd probably cut the wires for the LEDs because you don't want the eyes lighting up. You really don't. So